Today we're going to go back. We're starting in the Maimah already, back into the Maimah of Pasach Liyod, the Alter Rebbe, on Amud, the paragraph beginning Hinei Ha'inyan Yuvon, on Amud Chaf Ches, I believe. Is that right?
That's where we're starting?
Yeah. That's what we're up to. So we finished hagaha Zayin, and we've explained how whilst Chachma is called Chachma, it's Loi B'Chachma Yediyah. At the same time, it's also a Moker, even though it's Bein Arichta, the Ilmus Biyah, it's a Moker, the Moker of sorts, of Chachma Abriya. And the same as all the other spheres. And this is what we're now going to explain. That how it's Shaykh to be a Moker for the Ilmis, the ultimately Nishtalshul from it, or Nivra from it. In Ha'inyan Yuvon. So this is all understood. Al derech mashal mi masha Amar Razal ein lecha kol eisef chuli. We understood based on the Maimon Razal that there isn't a blade of grass below that doesn't have a muzzle, the Maila, which encourages it to grow or insists on it to grow. So we see that Dava Gashmi Lamata is Mushrosh in Inyan Ruchni Lamaila, and then it quotes from Keheles V'Gavoya Mi Al Gavoya, that when you see something below, like someone being poor and destitute, you should know that there's the things that are higher upon the higher things, and then there's the Gavoya Mi Aleim, the things that are even higher than them. In the Marimokim here it says Keheles Tes Zayin, it should be Keheles Hey Zayin. It's Perik Hey, Pasuk Zayin, not, it's a mistake. Variatapuach Agashmi. Now the physical apple, Yesh Bei Mesikus, has sweetness. V'cheich Oichel Yitam, this is a quote from Eoiv, and the palate tastes its food. So, the human experience is that you can taste the sweetness of a physical apple. Now, the person, would you say that in the power of, which is in the earth, to enable things to grow, Asher ba'aretz, Tamil Masikus, that the ke'echatzi meach, we're not even talking about the nutrients in the earth, which for sure don't have Masikus. We're not even talking about Dov Gashmi here. We're talking about Dov Ruchni, the Ke'echatzi Meach. Would you say the Ke'echatzi Meach has Masikus? Has taste Bichlal? Tamu Masikus Gamkein, does it also have that? Upshita. B'mazel she'enim me'erech mo'ozeh klal. So for sure, when you're talking about the mazel of a Dov Gashmi, which grows in a particular, with particular characteristics, it's no, there's Be'en Arich to say that these same inyanim find themselves also in Sherish Hamakim. So we appreciate that things can be nishtalshul from somewhere else, something else, but that thing which is nishtalshul from could be be'en arich to it. Be'en arich, not literally, but sort of in a givism, certain aspects of it are taka, not begeder. They're not comparable. So ela inyan hu. The notion of sweetness as it manifests in characteristics of foods, lamata, really originates in the notion of chesed, the way it's lamayla. It's the inyan ruchni. It's the inyan ruchni called chesed. And from that inyan ruchni is nishtalshul through kama tzimtzumim, the inyan of mesikas apri, umeriru, and the bitterness comes from gvur. But the way is lamayla, it's got no shaykhs for the gashmias. Actually, b'shtalshus v'seidi yiridas hamadregas madrega achamadrega nisgashmu ad shenimshach mechinas chesed mesikus chuli. But through the extent of the extensive yiridas that this oil experiences, to the extent that it becomes niskashim, becomes materialized, then from what was once chesed evolves a notion of sweetness, physical sweetness. Now, ima yesha in arechi love, mikol mokim, umi mozki tchunase. So, on the one hand, it's incomparable. You can't compare the inyan ruchni called chesed to the physical thing called sweetness, but they are of the same order. They have similar tchunis. Just like we see, you see that the notion of sweetness and pleasantness can also manifest in inyanim ruchni. Like the pleasure a person can have from a dvar chochma, so it's not gashmistic masikus, but it's a ruchnistic masikus. The geschmack you can have from music. So from singing and music, a person can have a lot of geschmack, and he can call someone's voice. They've got a sweet voice. Now, you wouldn't say that the sweetness of someone's voice is even. And here we're not talking about the inyan the way it is lamai lamai. We're talking about dova gashmi here, in a sense. Koil, the human voice, is a dova gashmi, but the sweetness of someone's voice is incomparable to the sweetness of the apple. And you would say, in a sense, on the one hand, they've got nothing to do with each other. On the other hand, there's a certain similarity. Whilst in substance, they're of a different order, in substance, they're not the same. But in character, they are similar. So we can understand that from a davar ruchni, because it's got a similar characteristic, whilst it might be of a completely different substance and manifestation, but from the ruchnius can be nishtalshal to the gashmi is the inyan of mesikus. Hagam shehefresh v'ahevdol rabbanim, even though they are immensely different. So the same thing is what the inyan of chachma, which is what we were talking about. When it comes to chachma, you can talk about gavoya mi al gavoya, that there are higher and higher upon highers, that of where it comes from. So in the human chachma, what we describe as broadly the inyan of intellect, is incomparable to the notion of intellect the way it is in Eilam HaBriya. Mikol mokim hu moki b'sherish liyis mimenu hisavas b'chinas chachma dasi aniglis. It's still the sherish mokir of it. V'kachi chachma da'atzilis, and the same is true with chachma da'atzilis. The ima yeshu b'chinas chakim v'lei b'chachma yediyah, even though it's called chakim, but only it's called chakim because it's a mokir of chachma, not because it is chachma in any known way, in any comparable way. We call mokim he b'chinas mokir the mokir. Mokir the mokir. Mokir the mokir. The chachma. Chuli. Yeah? So he's going to start a sentence now, and he's going to interrupt the sentence to tell us what's going on. So we have a sentence. Avaliya is anthu chakim. Dahainu amshachas erin seif b'chachma. And then the Rebbe Rashab interrupts, and says, don't worry about that sentence, because we're going to come back to that sentence when we finish this hagaha. We'll come back to that sentence and we'll fill it in, even though it's not really going to finish the sentence, because then this is the hagaha ches, and then hagaha tes is also going to interrupt the sentence. And it's going to, there's really to the end of the period now. It's like that the hagahs are dominating, and we've got to fit in the way you've got to fit the Alter Rebbe around the hagahs, not the other way around. But let's jump into this hagaha. So he's going to tell us where we're at and what we're about to do, what we're about to discuss. What is the issue at hand? Ato, there you have it. Ato maschil levaya eich sheklolos hagilu be'eses firis ta'atzilus hu bechinas ha'orda levad v'loi sha'atzilus ein areich legabi ha'in seif. So it's now going to he's going to begin the explanation. When we talk about the eses firis of Atzilus, we're talking about the Oyer at the moment, is a ha'orda levad. Because Atzilus is ein arich legabi ein seif. So how can we've just said that Chachma is a mokir, the mokir of Chachma of Biyah. For it to be a mokir, the mokir, it has to you have to now create a little bit of a distance and a separation of sorts, or at least a distinction between it and Eir and Seif. Because you can't say that Eir and Seif, at least according to the Rekanti, you can't say this. That it's the Mokir. It's Poshet. Okay, so that's what we're going to be trying to do now. But Yosef, and like as we say, we're talking about the Eir. Well, I don't know. Actually, I'm wrong. Sorry. The Esses Spheres, the Eirus of Atzilus in the Kalim of Atzilus, the whole thing. The Esses Spheres of Atzilus, Eirus and Kalim. But when it says it's a Ha'ara Levad, what it means is the Eir is a Ha'ara Levad.
But the Kalim isn't anything to itself.
Right. So the Ad can, sorry. But Yoysa Masha Ein Arich Asi Legabi Atzilus, Ein Arich Atzilus Legabi Erin Sei Baruch, like the famous statement that to an even greater degree than what we say that Bia or Asiya more specifically is incomparable to Atzilus, Atzilus is even more incomparable to the L'mayla Atzilus. The degree of incomparability, the Ein Arichkeit, is to an even greater degree when we're talking about Atzilus L'gabi L'mayla Atzilus. And that's what we're going to elaborate upon now. The Ad kan dibba be'inina Kalim da Atzilus. Because until now, what were we talking about? The Kalim. Shnikroim tikkunim l'gabi ha'oir ha'mei b'seicham. We called them tikkunim in relation to the oir, which is mispasha b'seicham. Dagam sheim b'chinas Kalim levushim levad, even though they're just Kalim and they're just levushim, so to speak, l'gabi oir and seif. וכנ"ל באריכס ההפרש בין אוירס וכלים בעצם מציאוסם שהם בחינת כוח הגיל וכוח ההלם שהוא בחינת כוח הבלתי בגבול וכוח הגבול חולי. Like we've explained the arichas in the previous hagaha, that the oiris are this pashtus of the keiach habligvul of the Ein Sof, and the kelim are the keiach hagvul. So the kelim function as kelim levushim to the oir, mikomokim ha'oir mislabish b'seichem misyachin in mohem, and yet the oir is mislabish in them. It's nistakim by them. It's misyachid in mohem to the point where we can say iva gamu ichad ukamay guf nefesh yoyus ta guf eine be'erech nefesh tezeh gashmi v'zeh ruchni mikomokim yare nefesh mislabish beguf misyachid in. So, as much as we want to say the two things are incomparable to each other, the poil they make a shidduch with each other, just like the guf nefesh, so to the eirus nekelim. So if we're using all of our mashals, this is going back to Perik Aleph. In just like we said that the guf is a levush to the nefesh, so too the esakeiches hanefesh are a levush, are a tikkun, are tikkunim, the gabi, the etzem hanefesh. Umikomokim hare hanefesh poyeles mispashetes bekeiches v'seichel umidus misyachid imohem. So just similarly too, that there's the nefesh is poyel al yedei aseichel amidus al yedei akeiches. So that's why they're called tachshitin, they're called tikkunim. Yeah. Back to the Hagoyis and Began. This is just doing quick, expecting you to have all of this in your pocket. The same thing is true with Esses Firis Atzilus. Dem hayoyis shakelim einam be'erech ha'yirin seif. Mikol mokim eirin seif mislabish bahem misyachid imoim betachas hayichud. Okay.
What's the status?
Im hayus.
Doesn't tell us why, does it? Arj explained to me earlier that there's something special about the Kalim. They've got higher shirish.
We're not talking about them. It's not.
It hasn't explained why. It just says it is.
I'll explain why. What?
Explain.
But how is that Kali to it?
Right. You just said that it
Because
is.
it sits out of course. Tatzilus, as we explained in the previous
They're
hagah.
not compatible.
It's the koyach hagvul and the koyach habligvul shabei Ein Sof.
Right.
They all come from the Ein Sof.
Right.
Now, I want to just give an introduction to the next bit. So what we have just done now is we've compared the way in which the nefesh is mislabish in the guf, and the way the etzem nefesh is mislabish in the esakeiches nefesh, to the way the oiris of Atzilus are mislabish in the kelim of Atzilus. Yeah, so that's what we've just done, which is fitted into everything we've been talking about right now. Yeah, that's been in the whole from the Hagois from the beginning. That's the structure. Right from the beginning, when it asked what is the Oir, it went straight into the Mashal of the Nefesh. Yeah? What do we want to do now? We want to explain how the Oir of Atzilus is Be'in Aroich to the Maila Atzilus. What is the nature of the Oir of Atzilus? So the comparison is the Oir is compared in this sense either to the Nefesh or to the Etzma Nefesh. There's a problem with that mashal. And now for that I want you to go back. If you look in the footnote 327, it references a whole bunch of Maimorim. And it also if you also look in footnote 329, it references a whole bunch more Maimorim. They're all interesting in various different ways, but I think what's very helpful is the reference to the Nun Aleph, the Tofrish Nun Aleph. Zamaima v'yadaita Tofrish Nun Aleph, which I think is very helpful in this, in setting you up. Not even so much where it says from don't go from where it references, go earlier. Yeah, I think there it says Rish Zayin. You want to go from Rish Vav, just to get it's good to give you a certain background of like sort of the way to construct this idea over here, because it fits into a much if you look into all of these references, they're talking in sort of different sugyas. It seems like they're talking in different sugyas a little bit in adapting, but it's actually helpful to think about it in maybe some of those sugyas as well, or the way that the framing that you have over there. So in Yidait Nun Aleph, it asks the famous question. So he asks the question in the Yidaita of Nun Aleph, why is Oir in Soif called Oir and not Shefa? Yeah, so the Chokrim refer to Ashba Elikis as Shefa, and the Mekubalim refer to it as Oir. What is the reason for that preference? So he explains that Shefa, the thing that is Nishba, the thing that is shared, communicated, is itself a Metzias Davar. The implication of the term Shefa is the thing that is being Nishba is itself a thing of substance. And therefore, it makes a difference in the mashpia of the Shefa. That there's a difference between in the mashpia from before the mashpia and then during the hashpa. Because before the hashpa, they're not engaged in the act of hashpa. There is a noticeable difference, because the act of sharing something of substance requires primarily the inyan that the person, or the etzem, the thing from which this thing is being nishba, trying to use holistic terms, is going to be what we call mutrad bahashpa. It's going to be caught up, busy, occupied with the hashpa. And the obvious mashal of this is the hashpa from a Rav to a Talmud. That when a Rav wants to be mashpia to a Talmud, it doesn't happen automatically. It doesn't happen without an engagement of the mashpia. The mashpia has to be engaged in the act of hashpa. Why? Because the hashpa, even if the Rav is not giving over the etzem metzias haseichel and the kol oimek haseichel, he might be just giving the person a ha'arim etes of the seichel, but he's giving him something, and that something is not going to be nishba by itself. So that's one thing. It's already the two things. A shefa itself is a mitzias davar. The second thing is the mashpia is mutrad bahashpa. And the third thing is the etzem is mugda bahashpa. It's itself is in a sense defined by this act of ashpa. Or it's contained. It's not defined so much, but it's controlled. It's restricted by it. It's affected by it. How is it affected? Because at the time when the Rav is being mashpia, this seichel, this hashpa, when he's being mashpia, this shefa to the Talmud, he can't be involved in haskalas acheres. He can't be involved in other haskalas. He's occupied. So those are like sort of the three things that there in the Aleph he identifies, which is these are not. I'm just saying it's very well laid out in the Aleph. So therefore, the Mekubalim prefer to use the word oir, because oir, shefa is a mashal and oir is a mashal, right? There's no such thing as shefa and there's no such thing as oir. We have a mashal. We're using inyanim in our world that give us an insight. So the Chokrim chose shefa, and the Mekubalim preferred oir. And what was the issue with shefa? Shefa they associated with those problems. And by saying that the hashpah that comes from the Eibishter is called shefa, you would be suggesting that the Eibishter is busy, occupied with the thing, with the hashpah, with the hashpah to create the ilamis. And the Eibishter is in some sense limited by it. When he's busy doing that, he can't do something else. And they thought that was pigeya on Atmos and Sof. Atmos. So they didn't want to call it shefa. Instead, they prefer to call it oir, because in the mashal of oir is just a ha'arabul vad. It's not a metzias davar. It doesn't have its own mamashas. So therefore, it's not, because it itself is not a metzias davar, it's not able to be poyel any shinoi, one, or his spilus, two, in the etzem. It's not able to cause it to be mutrad, it's not able to cause it to be mugda. And the mashal, so where do we see this in oir? Which type of oir are you talking about? There's all different types of oir. So it gives the mashal, the famous mashal, oir v'ziv hashemesh, right? So the oir v'ziv hashemesh, that when it's the oir is not busy shining, it doesn't engage in the act of shining. The ha'ara, the oir v'ziv hashemesh, is nimshach mimenu me'elav u'memela. There's no direct engagement, and as such, when a cloud interrupts the ispashtus ha'oir v'haziv, it doesn't cause any shinui in the mo'or. The sun does not become diminished by the absence of the ziv hashemesh, and it doesn't become enhanced by the presence of the ziv hashemesh. There's no shinui and there's no spilus in the mo'or hashemesh by whatever happens to the ziv hashemesh, and the spashtus haziv happens mimenu me'elav and memela. So it's not mutrud and it's not mugda by it. Okay, so that's the mashal, as we know ba'arichas from so many places. But in one aspect, the mashal of the oir hashemesh is problematic, even for the Mekubalim. Doesn't solve all of their problems, because if you're going to say that oir v'ziv hashemesh is your mashal, then the reality is that oir v'ziv hashemesh is a hispashtus or a gilui hechreichi. It's a necessary gilui. Can't be stopped. The sun, the mo'or hashemesh, doesn't have any control over the hispashtus. The hispashtus, which is nimshach mimenu, is hechreichi. And to say on the Orin Sof that it's mukhrach, the Eibush has no choice. That there has to be a gilui. That he's a mo'or be'etzem. Because he's a mo'or, there has to be oir, and they can't stop it. The sun can't stop the ray of the sun. That would be problematic. That would be saying something about the Eibishter, which is problematic. Yeah? So we have another, because the Hamshacha, which is Nimshach from the Ein Sof, is a Hamshacha Tzini. The Eibishter wants to. And you know, if the Eibishter doesn't want to, it won't happen. He could start it and stop it. Right? So we have another mashal. And the mashal is from the Nefesh HaRuchni. This is the Nefesh HaRuchni, which is Mechayis HaGuf. Slabish and Mechayis HaGuf.
This is the Etzem Nefesh.
Yeah, Etzem and the Keiches, ultimately. But let's start with the Etzem HaNefesh. The Etzem HaNefesh is Mechayis HaGuf. But it's not busy doing it. It doesn't take any. Doesn't get tired from being mechai the guf. Why is the nefesh able to be mechai the guf? Because the nefesh itself is chai be'etzem. So it's chai be'etzem, it's chai lahachiyos. It doesn't take more effort to be mechai the guf of a tinik ben yoimei than oig melech habosha. It's not like there's the bigger effort. It's not. It's chayis kloli. It enables the guf to think. Fine. And also in the spashtus hanefesh. So, you know, if chas v'shalom there's a kilkul in one of the avrim, so chas v'shalom someone has a damaged eye, they can't see. Doesn't mean that there's a shinui in the nefesh. The nefesh still has a koyach hariyah. There's no shinui in the nefesh because that person can bear children that can see. Because in the act of hilada, it's hamshachos ha'etzem, and then the child can see. It just happens to be he has an eva that can't see. So the hispashtus of the nefesh and the guf doesn't cause a shinui in the nefesh. And in many ways, the nefesh is able to control the extent to which it's mispashit and not mispashit. You can restrict. The mashal he gives there is about when you have in a gilgul, the nefesh. Sometimes a nefesh will come a gilgul into a behema, but you don't see that the behema then has the koiches sichliim of a human being. There's a nefesh which has seichel of a medaber, and it's lavish in animals. The animal could become like a human, have human capabilities. It's not the case. It's able to restrict this pashtus achayis. So in a way that it becomes a better moshel because it's not a gilui hechreichi, it's a gilui ritzoni.
You could say
to an extent.
You could read into it like that.
And for that moshel works better for us. Right?
We're trying to understand it, not.
But there's a problem. There is also a problem though with the nefesh. The example of the nefesh. That as much as we say that the nefesh is not mutrot in the guf, and it's not mugda in the guf, and it has all of the things we don't want it to have. At the same time, it's stuck in that guf. It can't, whilst it's in that guf, it's restricted there. It can't be in another guf. And we're going to mention this stuff here, like, you know, it can't, when Eliyahu was in one place, it can be in another place when he's in a physical body. And that would be, if that is the type of oir that is mispashit, from which we're going to call oir in soif, the oir mispashit, the oir of the essence of Atzilus, that's what we're going to describe it as, then we're going to say, 1 second, that's not a very good moshel either. So what the Aleph does, it says, so you get the best from both worlds. The thing that's missing by the nefesh, you find by the sun, right? Because the sun can be everywhere. The sun, which the sun shines everywhere. It's not mugda where it's in any way where it's shining.
Right.
So it has the chisaron which you have in the moshel of the nefesh. You have that maila in the Eir HaShemesh in relation to the Eir HaShemesh, and the chisaron that you have in the Eir HaShemesh. You can find that maila in the Eir in the nefesh.
Just make a fusion.
Yeah, so that's what. So Oila Mikol, there was the lashon I think in the Nalef. Or Oila Mikol Anal is you have both the Mishalim. Okay, so that's the Nalef. Just want to give that as a background to coming into what we're going to say over here. Hine. So we've just compared the nefesh. What have we just done? We've just said the way the nefesh mislabish the guf is a mashal of the way the Eirin Seif is mislabish in Atzilus. You can't compare these two things. Mikol mokim hari nitvos mislabish mamish ba'guf atche mispoil mi mikri aguf. Goes even further here. Not only is it mislabish and it's nitvos, this is loshen nitvos, it's stuck, it's there, it's definitely mislabish in a oifen that it can't be anywhere else. And it's nispoil from the mikri aguf. V'zeh moirish u'brichnis islabshus mamish ba'aguf. V'gam atzmus neshama nitfeses mugderes ba'aguf. Shari kashim mislabeshes b'guf zeh I epshelo lislabish b'guf acher. Right? V'kamishkosa b'kel b'rama b'seif pirish ha'id rabba ay mashkosa sham b'seif id rabba Amar Reb Shimon tzava nachuli v'amar liyo kutchabrichus shadrani lahatzel Reb Hamnuna Saba v'chaveirav. It's a whole thing about Eliyahu who wasn't at the Idra, and he said, why weren't you not here? He goes, because I was the Eibush that sent me to go and save Reb Hamnuna Saba and his friends. V'chein moving. V'aloi Eliyahu nimtza b'chol bris milah. See, Eliyahu goes to all bris millahs, and some of them are at the same time in all different places. Gam shish kama brisis b'shah achas. You can have many brises at the same time. Eliyahu is all of them. So why could it not be the same thing here too? He could be both saving Reb Hamnuna Saba and still also be at the Idra, the Geirin or whatever it is, the Tiritz. When it comes to the bris milah, it just goes a ha'ara, a nitzutz of Eliyahu Navi. Become a brisis b'shachas, so mitzad the ruchni sadava. It can be in many places at the same time. In order to fulfill the shlichus, to save Reb Hamnuna Saba, you have to be mislabish naguf. I'm ashkosim in Rebina Shah Krishma Perikid Gimel. Ulezois should be yochel liyais, but mokim acher. So it couldn't be somewhere else at the same time. She'ei nefesh achas yechayla li hachyais beis gufim ke'echot. Harisha nefesh mugda u'mekusha baguf. So the nefesh becomes mugda in the guf. This is what I said the two times. Mutra the mugda. That this aspect of being mugda applies to the neshama in the guf. You can't say that the Eibishter is mugda in his gilui. V'agam shetzorich leim. Yeah, let's go to that. V'agam shetzorich leimada etzem hanefesh eine bebechinas islapshus mamish b'aguf. So now we're going to start taking a few steps up. We just said a very bold statement. The nefesh is mugda makusha b'aguf. Now, we've said a very blunt statement. Now we're going to make it more nuanced. V'agam shetzorich leimada etzem hanefesh. We say nefesh, we don't maybe say spashtus hanefesh, but the etzem han einoi b'chinas islapshus mamish b'aguf. Don't say that about the etzem hanefesh. The inyan is lapshus tefisha mamish. Who is mislabish and even if tefisa mamish who sheyesh lem shayches elazeh are those things which have a shayches to each other. Magishim says the two things that we're talking about here, what is mugda in what, is the eir v'chayis hanefesh mislabish b'guf. Hari every aguf magishim is eir hanefesh. A person's limbs are able to sense and feel their lebedikite. Physical brain, you get a headache when you think too hard, right? You experience the intensity of askola thinking. And the Avrim are therefore able to elicit an expansion of the oi, which is so if the kli is much more be'archava, it's more relaxed, it's heard a good joke, like in the mashal that they would say a riddle or something like that, to sharpen the brain, becomes more of a kli, could be mamshech, more of an oi. So there's a relationship there between the kli and the eir v'chayis hakli. And it is poyel that the oy which is nimshach should be pale if you open a kli. So the kli is able to, because it's gashmi, it's able to think so that the mayach hagashmi is able to be pale that the oy b'chayis hanefesh should be masculine askolos in yonim gashmi. If you open his dachachas a kli, kein meh b'ema oy b'cheinu b'ulas yayode. So if you have a more edler kli, then the oy b'chayis is able to be masculine askolos which are more edel. Also, everything is l'fi oy kli. It's a relationship. Ula hapach. That's all when you have a positive relationship. What about when you have a negative relationship? When the kli is not functioning properly, then the oir is instalik. The oir goes away. Here we're talking about the keiches hanefesh. All of those things can be tfisa in the Evri Aguf. That would be the mashal of the keiches hanefesh in the Evri Aguf. ולכן נעשה בהם שינוי מצד עברי הגוף, באופן הסגלוסם, וגם שינוי כללי בין קטנוס לגדלוס. You have all of the shinuyim. This goes back to the Yemesh Mini Atzeres that we from Ranat that we quoted at length in the previous hagaha when we talked about it. That this inyan of katnus and gadlus, that you see that a person's keiches hanefesh get affected by the kelim. This is when we were talking about the shita mareches. But now also here. But we're trying to differentiate. There's the hislapshus, the keiches hanefesh in the Evri Aguf. Then you can talk about tfisa. Then you can talk about hislapshus. Say that. Masha enkim be'etzem hanefesh, eine b'chinas hislapshus kazos. Ta'agam shemukushim aguf. Even though the etzem hanefesh has a relationship with the guf, mikomokim eine shayches laguf. Has no attachment to the guf. It doesn't cause any shina at all. We see that a blind person is still able to bear seeing people. Also, there's no it doesn't make a difference when the person is an adult or a child. The etzem hanefesh is no more attached or associated with the guf by a child than it is with an adult. Again, this is like, if you look back in the Nun Aleph, it's already at this stage. It's sort of, it's just more. It's not as backwards and forwards. We're gonna have a lot more backwards and forwards too about this sugya, but it's good to read the Nun Aleph first, so you have a little bit of a stable picture, and then you can have all of this analysis. It will make more sense. So because they move on, so we've taken a step back. We're not going as far as it's not a slabshus, it's fisa mamish, because that's is not. However, it is mugdom akushaboy. Whilst the etzem nefesh is being mechaya one particular goof, it can't be mechaya another goof. We're not going as far as saying it's got no it's become completely sunken into this goof and is completely defined by it. No, we're not going as far. We're still saying Eina Moshel Daimel Nimsha, but we're not being as blunt as we were in the first proposition. First proposition was Shanefesh Mugdom Ukusha Baguf. Yeah, in a manner where it's lashon tfisa. What was the lashon? Hari nitfus mislabish baguf. Nitfus mislabish. Atzmus nasham nitfeses. So we're taking back the claim of nitfeses. We're keeping makusha and mugda, but not nitfeses. Right? Shehu mechaya guf zeh ve'en yichila beis ahi lahachiyis guf acher. Im ki achayis mamish bebechinas islapshus mamish. Hu b'ha'arasa levad shenishba mimenu v'loi bo atzma. So what is mislabish in the guf in a manner of tfisa? It's only a ha'ara levad, and it's not itself. It becomes mugda in the hashpah that came from it, which is only a ha'ara, and it's a ha'ara ritzainis, and it has all of the alamailas which Lecheru would make it into a good mashal, but at the end of the day it becomes mugda in this hashpa, because it can't be mislabish in another body. Ubechlolus, hariz a shinui mikoidim shenimshech mimenu ha'oila hachiyos, sheloi haisa mugdaris. Before this neshama was mislabish in this guf, it was not mugdaris in this guf. So there's a shinui. And we can't say this about the Eibishter. That's why it's not a good mashal. Va'ati mugdaris. Shugam kinyin slapshus. So it doesn't work. So it becomes problematic. Yeah? I want to stop there. Because you see it says v'chein hu, and then there's a bracket that starts v'yesh lema. Your homework is to find me the end of that bracket. I can't find the end of that bracket. Yeah. Don't think you're just going to find it for me. It's not like I can't find it. I've looked. No, because later there's another bracket, and in the footnotes here they say chasasiyim chatzi igul, meaning they note when a bracket isn't ended, they make a note of it. Here they didn't make a note, which either means they missed it, or I just haven't found the end of the thing. I'd be happy to know, because it would help in structuring how to think about how to do the next shtickle. Okay? That'll be that for now.